Now let's move over to the AFC North division and coming into the season, obviously the Denver Broncos and New England Patriots were my top two picks to represent the AFC. Certainly thought the San Diego Chargers were a team who possibly could give a push as well, but I really thought that these teams in the AFC North, and particularly Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cincinnati, had some type of shot at possibly competing with New England and Denver to represent the AFC. And so we're going to get things started with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who won the division with an 11-5 record. I think you look at Pittsburgh's season and you have to like what you've seen on the offensive side of football. When you look at the weapons that they have, you're talking about Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown probably being your top connection in the NFL. You're looking at Brown leading the NFL in receptions, in reception yards. What a banner year he had for the second straight year. This guy is an absolute stud, and really not anything he can't do on the football field. Ben Roethlisberger certainly showed that he's still one of the top talents at the quarterback position in the NFL. You like also for Pittsburgh how their wide receivers finally came around. Got off to a slow start. Ben Roethlisberger over the past two seasons losing some of his top targets. You're talking about Mike Wallace and Emmanuel Sanders. And so you had second-year guy Marcus Wheaton as long as rookie Martavius Bryant. And it took a little while for those guys to really come around. If you recall, Pittsburgh started the season off in a no-huddle, fast-paced type offense. But once they pumped the brakes and really came back into your normal speed offense, it allowed for Wheaton and particularly rookie Martavius Bryant to pick up the offense a little bit faster and be more effective. You also like about Pittsburgh finally able to get that offensive line in order, being able to spend some draft picks you've seen now blossoming over the last 5 years, past 5 years or so. You're talking about Mike Pouncey. You're talking about David DeCastro. You look at Mike Adams, things that those guys were able to do. And then you have running back Le'Veon Bell, who really exploded onto the scene in his second year. From day one, you can see that him losing 15 pounds really helped him out in the speed department, the agility department. This guy also has some big-time talent catching the football out of the backfield. You're talking about a running back who not only finished in the top 5 in the NFL running the football, but also finished with 82 receptions. And so really became a dynamic all-purpose game-changing type of player. When you looked at the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, that was a unit that we had not really become accustomed to seeing in past years struggle the way that it did, especially early on. But we understand that those players are getting older. Troy Polamalu, Ike Taylor, really the last two pieces from the last time Pittsburgh won a Super Bowl, still hanging around there back in the secondary. We've seen Taylor miss about 10 games in the season with a broken forearm. Polamalu suffered some hamstring injuries, but just doesn't have the same speed that he used to, which certainly takes away from some of his playmaking ability, and particularly in the trenches where we had become used to seeing guys like Casey Hampton, Brett Kiesel. Those guys no longer there. The linebackers that became so vaunted, Larry Foote and James Harrison, those type players no longer there. Well, into the equation this year, you did have rookie Ryan Shazier from Ohio State, battled through some injuries. Guy's got a lot of talent. I think he's an excellent fit, fits that identity. Lawrence Timmons still played at a very high level. Pittsburgh actually ended up tapping on James Harrison to come back over and help that football team. He certainly did that. But in the trenches is an area still where Pittsburgh has to get a little bit better. And particularly they played the majority of their season without their second-year guy, a first-round pick from the prior year, Jarvis Jones from Georgia. Certainly depending on him to be much more of a playmaker. Nonetheless, at 11-5, Pittsburgh really played well. I would have liked to see them in the matchup against the New England Patriots. Unfortunately, they got knocked out in the first round at home by Baltimore Ravens. We know that when those two teams play, it's anybody's game. The teams are so familiar with each other. Very storied history, but in particularly, I know Pittsburgh really wish they could have had their star running back Le'Veon Bell, who got injured the last game of the season, had basically a hyper extended knee, just unable to put any type of pressure on it. I know with him in the game, Pittsburgh certainly thinks that their prospects could have been a whole lot different. Nonetheless, I think that Pittsburgh has to feel good coming into next season, knowing that on the offensive side of the football, this team is fully stacked up and loaded. They can fully focus their attention on trying to build back up that defense. Without question, getting some tougher defensive linemen to stop the run getting some guys to get pressure from the edges, and also working on that secondary, which was average at best. Coming in second in the division, it was the Cincinnati Bengals at 10-5-1. And let me say this first about Cincinnati. This was a team that certainly got marred by injuries as well. When you look at Cincinnati, they played the majority of the year without their Pro Bowl linebacker, Vontaze Burfict. They played quite a few games without star wide receiver A.J. Green, who was just really nicked up and hampered all year. Giovanni Bernard, their starting running back, missed a couple games. They also were without their their second best receiver, Marvin Jones, missed the entire year with a foot injury. They also were playing without their starting tight end, Tyler Eifert, who missed the entire year. So I will put an asterisk by the Cincinnati Bengals. That is an awful lot of talent out of their lineup, and they just weren't able to overcome it. When you look on the offensive side of the football, you certainly like some other guys stepping up. We're talking about rookie running back Jeremy Hill. This guy is very impressive, has a bright future ahead of him. Hugh Jackson came over as the offensive coordinator, kind of switched things around from what we had seen out of Jay Gruden being a pass-heavy attack to more focusing on the run, and I think that's going to bode well for Cincinnati in the future. Bernard, when healthy, got back in the lineup, did a great job behind Hill running the football, also providing the versatility, catching out of the backfield, creating some nice matchup problems for opposing linebackers. But Andy Dalton really is the guy who continued to struggle despite Hugh Jackson focusing on running the football to really try to alleviate all the pressure having to be on Dalton and really trying to make every play. Dalton still in limited opportunities through 19 touchdown passes, yet 17 interceptions. Mohamed Sanu, in a similar type way, we've seen Golden Tate step in for a star receiver out in Detroit being Calvin Johnson. Mohamed Sanu was able to come in and do an outstanding job replacing A.J. Green in some games that Green had to miss. I honestly believe, like in Detroit, if it wasn't for Sanu, Cincinnati might have had another loss or two on their record. But Andy Dalton is the guy that I'm really looking at here. He's got to find a way to do better in the big ball games. And I mean, let's face it, the regular season is great, but this was the fourth straight season that the Cincinnati Bengals made the playoffs, were one and done, and it wasn't in good fashion. They didn't even put up a good showing, primarily because they can't put up any points. And so, when next year, there's going to be no excuse. He's going to have all those weapons back. Cincinnati invested a lot of money in Andy Dalton, but he's got to show that in the big games, he can step up and play well. If not, no matter how much talent Cincinnati has, they're going to continue to struggle to try to win a playoff game. When you look at the Cincinnati Bengals team on defense this year, you really felt the effects of Mike Zimmer taking his business over to Minnesota, where you've seen a major upgrade in that defense. Again, yes, Cincinnati played without their top defensive player, Vontaze Burfict, but, just loose around the edges. Now, they did also lose Michael Johnson to free agency. We know Geno Atkins, who was regarded as a top, 2 or 3 defensive tackle prior to an ACL injury back in 2012. Yes, Cincinnati had some guys missing on defense, but I really think it was scheme. I really think it was philosophy. Mike Zimmer, a guy who really had these guys focused, and we just didn't see the same production on the field. You look at the Cincinnati Bengals team and you have to say to yourself, wow, there's an awful lot of talent on this team. I think the areas they definitely need to address are going to be their offensive line as well as their secondary. Now, yes, they do have Dre Kilpatrick, who they got a couple years ago from Alabama. They did go out and draft Darqueze Dennard from Michigan State. So maybe we'll see a little bit more of those guys, because certainly Leon Hall and Terrence Newman definitely getting much older on those edges. I think Newman's about 35, 36. Leon Hall's about to be 30. Reggie Nelson's still a good defensive back, but I think the Cincinnati Bengals team is really loaded in talent in your key position areas. And if they can upgrade their offensive line, upgrade that secondary a little bit, I think this is a team that certainly is going to be a force to be reckoned with once the Tom Brady and Peyton Manning era is over, and that time is coming very, very soon. At 10-6, you had the Baltimore Ravens. Great job by them. I think dropping a late game in Houston certainly hurt their prospects of potentially winning that division, as well as losing late in the season to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who eventually won outright. Yes, Baltimore was able to get revenge in the first round of the playoffs, going out and winning that game at Pittsburgh. And when you took a look at Baltimore this year on offense, much more efficient. We recall the year before, They tried to do the pistol shotgun formation, just didn't work out well. Ray Rice had his worst year as a pro, couldn't even muster up 700 yards. And then you looked at the wide receiver position, and with Baltimore losing Anquan Bolden, it was only Torrey Smith there. So Joe Flacco very limited in his options, especially when his tight end Dennis Pitta went down with an injury. Well, this year, I think that Baltimore did everything they needed to do on offense to get that team back better. We're talking about going out and getting free agent Steve Smith Sr. from the Carolina Panthers. We certainly seen him come in and pay some big time dividends. They went out and got Owen Daniels, and that was really something that saved their season because Dennis Pitta went down yet again with the season-ending injury. Owen Daniels able to come in and replace him. And then you go out and get Justin Forsett, free agent from the Houston Texans. You bring Daniels and Forsett in because you acquired Gary Kubiak to run your offense for you. And again, it paid big dividends. That zone blocking scheme, we've seen it work time and time again. Justin Forsett was able to maximize on that to the tune of over 1,200 yards. Joe Flacco, much more of an effective passer, having not just Torrey Smith, but also Steve Smith Sr. to pass the football to. And I tell you, Smith Sr. was a perfect fit for this team. Really took on that Ravens identity as a fiery guy. Reminded me, bringing a lot of that leadership and zealousness to that locker room that we've seen out of a Ray Lewis. So much needed leader in that locker room. Fit and perfect for them in that offense. Joe Flacco played well, but still that offense missing something, just inconsistent on one Sunday too many. When you look at the Ravens defense, that front seven definitely got after it. When I seen it in the preseason, it was certainly a defensive unit that I was very high on. I love the guys they have up front. When you were talking about Haloti Ngata, rookie Timmy Jernigan, Elvis Dumerville, Terrell Suggs, rookie C.J. Mosley, Courtney Upshaw. I mean, these guys really know how to get after it. They were top 10 against stopping the run, certainly amongst the best teams in the NFL at getting after the quarterback. But their Achilles heel, without question, is their secondary. When you're talking about Ladarius Webb and Jimmy Smith, solid but not good enough. And then their starting safeties were a rookie, Terrence Brooks from Florida, and from Florida State, and Matt Elam in his second year from Florida. So those guys still learning on the job. Baltimore Ravens really had a grand opportunity to beat the New England Patriots in the divisional round at New England. They were up 2 times in that ball game by 14 points. Had an opportunity really on a 4th and goal to try to punch it in, settled for a field goal. New England ended up scoring a touchdown. Baltimore still got the ball back, had a nice drive going, and Joe Flacco just kind of misread a play. Really did not manage his time wisely. Ended up throwing an interception to bail New England out and give them a win. And so I think Baltimore is another team that's got going to come back with a huge chip on their shoulder. I think they're going to have the majority of pieces in place. I think the question marks now with Gary Kubiak gone, what type of offensive style are they going to run? In particular, are they going to keep that zone blocking scheme that worked out so well for them? Without question, the area that these Baltimore Ravens need to address is that secondary. There is no doubt about that. And then you had the Cleveland Browns, and I'm going to tell you this about Cleveland. This was a team after week 11 that was 7-4. And they had every opportunity. They owned first place in that division. 5 games left to go. They could have won this division, but just too much inconsistencies going on. A lot of confusion on the offensive side of the football. You know, Brian Hoyer, yes, he did end up starting, but, you know, this whole Johnny Manziel wanting to get him on the football field, it's just something that loomed negatively over this Cleveland Browns team. And then Cleveland didn't want to make up their, they didn't want to make their mind up on a running back. You know, essentially at one point you had 3 running backs. Free agent pickup Ben Tate, 2 rookies, Isaiah Crowell and Terrence West, who look better than Tate. But when you make an investment like that, you've got to put him on the football field. He began to grumble when his playing time was cut. Again, you had the whole Johnny Manziel thing swirling around anytime Brian Hoyer made a mistake. And then you got Josh Gordon, your star wide receiver, coming back after 10 games missed. He's trying to get himself in the fold. Jordan Cameron, he was injured all year. He's one of the best tight ends in football the year before. They lost their center, Alex Mack, early on in the season with an injury that he was gone all year. So, I mean, just too many inconsistencies, just too much going on that offense where they really couldn't get it in sync. Nonetheless, like I said, after week 11, they were 7-4 in first place in that AFC North division. and they just dropped it. And the guy you have to look at who's no longer on the team, David Akers, missed a couple field goals that could have given Cleveland 2 more wins and possibly a little bit more of an edge to trying to win that division or get a playoff spot. So, certainly the issues for this Cleveland Browns team, without question, were on the offensive side of the football. When you looked at Cleveland's defense this year, unit played very well, able to make amends for losing their top defensive tackle, Big Phil Taylor, who's a handful to deal with in the middle. But they got the versatility and guys there. You also talk about losing to free agency, DeQuell Jackson. He had been the top tackler on that team for so long. He took his business to Indianapolis. All instilled Cleveland Browns defense, played lights out, kept Cleveland in every game. You love Joe Hayden at Pro Bowl, shut down defensive cornerback. They brought over Dante Whitner, a hard-hitting safety. You like Scrines, your other defensive back. Went out and drafted Justin Gilbert, who spent a lot of time working inside in the nickel. Barcavius Mingle, Paul Kruger. I mean, there certainly was enough talent. Al Robertson, guys who can get after it. Jim Leonard. These are a lot of guys who can come and make things happen. And so there is no question when you look at that Cleveland Browns team, finishing 7-9, losing their last 5 games, trying to experiment with Johnny Manziel, not able to get committed to a running back, not able to run the football effectively. Josh Gordon not able to get back in the fold because Manziel unable to get him the football. I mean, just really turned into a complete circus there and hurt the Cleveland Browns. I think you now look at this Cleveland Browns team and they've got to figure things out because Johnny Manziel checked into rehab. We're not too sure how serious he is about football. Josh Gordon is already suspended for the entire year due to failing another drug test. Jordan Cameron, what's going to be his health concern? Can Alex Mack come back at 100%? Who's going to be your starting running back? And so, Cleveland, I think their defense is intact. I expect for them to be a little bit better, but they've got to get their offense figured out. It is in complete shambles right now. They need an offensive coordinator, and that is not in a very attractive position right now.